So again, we're talking about the circumstances that give opportunity to fashion character. And although the circumstances are never the same in our lives, the principles of how we deal with circumstances are always the same. You can respond to good or you can respond wrongly. You can choose to grow or you can choose to opt out. And so my father, Jack Hendrickson, your grandfather, was a man who was very much aware of character building. In fact, in my childhood, almost all decisions and all matters that needed to be decided were based upon, is it character building or not? So one of the things, for instance, was every night during the spring and summer months, when we'd come home from school, not during middle summer, of course, but we'd come home from school, you had to work 1 hour in the garden or mowing the lawn before you could go play, because that's character building. And I was thinking of something else.
Had to get rocks out, didn't you?
Yeah, we had to clean rocks out or pull the weeds, or later in the fall then we had to harvest. Oh, I know. Another thing was my dad never had a TV in our home until after we left home. And that was because for character issues. He just felt like our characters would be better served to not be entertained by something else. In other words, go out in the woods and find something. Make character on your own. And I remember going to school, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and kids were like, did you watch that show last night? No, we don't have a TV. Don't have a TV? What do you do, for goodness sake? I don't know, we got plenty to do, you know. We got the farm animals that were around our house then, we made pets out of them. In warm months, I made dams in the little creek that ran by the house, or we went bullfrog gigging, or mushroom hunting, or building forts, or whatever. So there was just squirrel hunting. There was always stuff to do. You know, I never thought anything about missing a TV, except if all the kids were watching some certain show, then it'd be fun to watch it, you know. But, so my point is, Grandpa made most of his decisions based on characters, what it would do for character or not. Would it create character, or would it erode character? Would it shortcut or short-circuit character issues, character opportunities? So anyway, we're talking about opportunities to create character, and so next I want to talk about this is show and tell. I want to talk about something that was very key for
Prop.
a propeller.
Whoa.
Propeller.
This is a propeller that powered or thrust forward I think it was called the launch. And Grandpa had a barge. This is my grandpa, your great grandpa. He had a barge. On this barge, he would carry cars and tractors and livestock. It wasn't a barge like we see in the rivers now. It was not that big. It was just a big flat thing. Maybe, if I remember the pictures, there's some pictures in there, maybe 10 or 12 feet wide and maybe 20 feet long. Flat bottom, and you could drive in there, or you could put livestock in there. But then the launch was what they would take the family to church with. And then he had a rowboat that they'd use for the kids and different things. Anyway, so at one point, there's another guy who lives on the island, way down south in the island, and he was questionable character. He had a kind of notorious reputation for not being completely honest, and there's some thievery that happened. At one point, my grandfather's boat came up missing. So I'll kind of jump in the middle of the story. So Don McCullough, just somebody that lives in the area, says that at one time, Mr. Woosley, who is the guy who has questionable character, offered to sell him a launch fitting the same description as my father's launch. Surprise, surprise. Red also had other motorboats for sale. Now, Red Woosley. Red is his nickname. Woosley's his last name. Cousin Bud says it was commonly thought around LaGrange that Red was responsible for the disappearance of the Hendrickson's boat. Dad stood that day studying the freshly cut rope to the boat that was the envy of all of his river friends. It was a great boat, and everybody said, wow, Jess Hendrickson has a great boat. They wanted a boat like his. I can imagine the distress that caused his heart to sink. In the following weeks, his hopes of finding it faded. He would never have his boat again. Writing this story revives my interest in the big shifty potentate of LaGrange Island. That's Red Woosley. Grandpa's kind of making light of his big kingly, I can do what I want on this island, I can steal or I can whatever, and I can get by with it, get away with it. Does anyone know the rest of the story? Who cut the rope? And to where did Dad's boat disappear? Out of my fascination with the mystery, a fresh curiosity hits me. Tell me, old Red Woosley, did you steal our boat? And that's the title of this particular chapter. Consequently, Dad would have to keep his old flatboat launch. However, eventually he replaced its single cylinder with a car engine. Wow. And Dad had some misgivings about the powerful automobile engine. Was it too much for the thin wooden hull? Under a load someday, would it twist loose from the mounting blocks, flip over, and crash to the side? Well, it never did. However, since the outboard motor was taking its place, and since the hull had become quite deteriorated, we hauled it up on the bank for the last time in the early 40s. How many years ago is that?
Long time ago.
60 years ago. Almost.
Yeah. And so I would imagine that,
Oh, sorry.
That-
Yeah, 80 years ago.
yeah, 60,
sorry, I
80
was
years
thinking
ago,
2000, yeah.
and this is probably another 10 or 20 years, who knows, older than that.
Wow.
And so, because that's the late 40s is when Grandpa retired the boat. And it says they pulled it up on the bank for the last time. We chopped the hole up for kindling for Mom's brand new Montgomery Ward cook stove in our Missouri home. See, they moved off the island to the mainland then. The grease-soaked shivers started fires almost instantly. So you see, as I mentioned at the beginning of the chapters, Dad's launch at last went up in flames. The engine sat out under the catalpa tree in the yard. I assume it was hauled off for scrap within another 10 years. The brass propeller that served so well, that pushed our family to church Sunday mornings, that old beat-up propeller is today mounted on our living room wall, way up high. And sometimes when I fix my thoughts on it for long, I experience an inside meltdown over all that it stands for. You put a picture in here.
Same one.
This old brass propeller has character. It's been hammered onto the drive shaft. You can see the marks visible on the opposite side. The shaft hole is wallowed out. In other words, it's not nice and round, and you can see where it's kind of splayed out. And the set screw holes are stripped. It's plowed through sandbars and struck many rocks and been sprung from hitting so many snags. Grandpa, you can notice here how it's been filed down and sharpened after it probably hit a big old rock, got a big ding, and then he would file it down. And it hit a big old snag and probably bent this blade out crooked ways, and then it'd be hammered back. And since it's brass, it has a little bit of bending capacity. You don't want it too soft because it wouldn't stand up anything. You don't want it too hard or it'll shatter when it hits the first rock. So it has to be a little bit soft and a little bit hard. We would stand on the bow of the boat until the bow was almost swamped. Remember Grandpa standing over the front of the boat here on the... Okay, so now they've gone out on the river and they've gone over a sandbar. And the propeller is cutting into the sandbar. Bogging down, they're not going to be able to go in far because the propeller sticks down lower than anything else in the boat. He'd bring everybody in the front of the bow of the boat. Everybody stand in the bow until the bow was almost ready to go under. That raised the back part of the boat.
Which got it out of the sand.
It brought it out of the sand, and this brought the prop up near the surface of the water. Their dad could stand in the shallow water along the bank to fix the prop. In other words, if he'd hit a big rock or a snag or something and it bent it or something like that, he could bang on it or whatever to fix it and tighten it on its drive shaft again. Maybe the set screws came loose and the drive shaft just spinning on the inside. I gratefully remember that this old propeller pushed our family on our journey to the house of God, Sunday after Sunday. So
Amen.
there you have it. Two
That's so
pieces.
cool you saved that.
Two pieces of real life memorabilia.
Amen. It's very
Part of
good.
the character building and an integral part of the legacy
Very
that
good.
resides in all of us.
That's awesome.
Very good.
Wow.
So cool.
Did you guys tack these?
That looks like Grandpa's handwriting.
Yep,
Oh, it
it
was?
is. And
Wow.
then,
Grandpa always had like hieroglyphic
and
handwriting.
then
Ancient
Grandma,
Egyptians.
Yeah. Could never read it. He'd send me birthday cards, and I'm like, can you read that for me?
so Grandma had these, and then this year I think it was, oh yeah, in August, when I was down there, she said, "You want these?" I said, "You better believe I do." So then it came to me to make a little moment and hopefully a video that
For all
brings it
you
back.
guys.
This is beautiful, Dad. Beautiful.
Cool.
Cool.
Although the handwriting is not in cursive. They would almost write in cursive, remember that?
Well, it's Grandma's or Grandpa's, I don't know for sure which.
It does. Yeah, so the hammer mark should be on this side.
Probably.
So you can
Yeah.
see it's got beat up there.
It's amazing.
And it's pushed on that
Near
way to the
100
drive
years
shaft.
old,
Uh-huh.
really.
Drive shaft.
I think you're
Near
right.
90.
Because you look here, you see this groove is where it was shoved on so tight that it's pushing against another piece of metal here.
Yeah.
And so it's created a groove around there.
It's all stripped out in there.
And the threads
Yeah.
here are stripped out. And you can see
Amazing
where it's got
how they
some
save
pretty
that.
serious
That's fun.
filings going on there.
Very forward thinking to think that far ahead to save the propeller off the boat. It's so cool that he did that.
Uh-huh.
It's heavy.
It is.
Wow.
Solid brass.
Thank you, Grandpa Jesse and Grandpa Jack.
Yeah.
Grandpa Dad.
Grandpa Dad.
Grandpa Dad. Grandpa Dad.